Hello and welcome back. Or welcome. Either way. You could be returning, you could be brand new to the thing. I don't know. Does it really matter? Does any of it really matter? I mean, let's just get nihilistic right now. No, I'm kidding. So yes, welcome back to another episode of me. How narcissistic is that? Nihilistic, narcissistic. Somebody just got a thesaurus with N's in it. I'm up to N, is I guess what I meant to say. I botched that one. I'm keeping it in. So, how are ya? How goes it? How was your Easter? I guess you could say. I don't know if you're like me. I don't know if your family even celebrates such a thing. Um, my girl definitely knows a lot about the pagan stuff, so I'm sure she could probably tell me about how Easter's yet another stolen pagan religion. It doesn't matter if it's an excuse to see the family, which I mean, that's all that really kind of matters. Does it have to be the fact that zombie Jesus means that rabbits lay eggs? It doesn't. It's an excuse to have food that's gonna put you 3 pounds up the next day. It's a chance to watch somebody fail to corral their kids. That's what it's all about in the long run, isn't it? We had a decent one. It was all right. That's nothing to write home about. It's so funny. This is supposed to be a segment about stuff that's been going on in my life, and there's not really much going on in your life. It ends up being a rant. So yeah, I had a decent weekend. Otherwise, we did something that we normally never would do, and so we have some neighbors that are temporarily living next door, and so just on a whim, my girl was like, "Hey, neighbor," and they were like, "Hey," and just instantly invited us over that night, and so we went out, hung out, had some good talks, conversation. They get us good and drunk, and so basically Saturday was a wash. We spent most of the day recovering. So, trying now that I have weekends off and stuff, I'm trying to be more productive and have us get stuff done in the house. And we still managed to get some done on Sunday before we had to go be social, but not nearly as much as we were planning to. So, again, it is what it is, and it's nice just being able to finally start being able to get from room to room a little bit better. It's not like we're hoarders, but it it's tough when you definitely want to have a certain amount of stuff that you're going to find useful at some point in your life, and then you don't want to get rid of it because it seems like the second you get rid of it, that's when you needed it. So it's tough not to start accumulating stuff faster than you have space for. So we have been trying as best we can to organize and pare down as best as we can. Speaking of, so I thought that for today I might actually do something a little bit differently, and again, just making Nick 101 history. Actually, have a segment for the episode, and I swear when I was looking for it, I'm obsessed with phrases and the origins of them, and how the meaning gets lost over time, but we still might do a bastardized version of them. And I was going to look for the book for reference when I wanted to do my segment of phrases and stuff. And I was looking around and I was like, I swear to God, did she return it back to her friend that she got it from? Because this was a completely random thing. Like, I already normally like the phrases. She happened to get one from a friend, not even knowing about my love of them. And then when I went to look for it for this episode, I was like, are you kidding me? Of course. Of course it's not here. The one time that you need it. And I actually was able to find it. But that's how it always seems to go. And so that's why I don't get when you get to the hoarder level where you literally have to keep all of your garbage and, clear a pathway from one room to the other. And ultimately that's your demise, is you either get buried by a pile of garbage, or something happens with the foundation, or one of the floors collapses just because of the sheer amount of stuff that you have. So I would never get to that point, but I can definitely see how you could get a little cluttered in your life. And if anything has been taught to me during the recent years, is that you definitely want to, cluttered house, cluttered life, something like that, where you actually feel a lot better mentally. And we could all use as much mental health as we can these days. Is if you're feeling despondent and stuff, it seems like if you have a genuine issue with depression, that people saying, oh, just go out and exercise and stuff. Well, it seems like they're brushing aside your pain, and but there is a lot to be said for physical activity. You get natural endorphins, you actually feel like you're accomplishing something, you feel healthier. There's a lot to be said about it, but also the same thing is you see these people that are like motivational speakers or whatever, and they're talking about, just when you start the day, just get out of bed and make the bed. Now you don't want to stay in it all day, and you also have accomplished something. And so if you just do little mini victories like that throughout the course of the day, it actually helps. And I'll be damned if it doesn't, if it actually does help. So I was thinking about phrases. So I'll get into the phrase book in a second, but I was more thinking about phrases where we've lost the original meaning over time, whether that's by a device or by just sheer luck. But one of the big ones is, curiosity killed the cat. Everybody knows that one. It's something that your parents would tell you if you got hurt going someplace or doing something that you shouldn't have, and it's like curiosity killed the cat, and you never knew what it came from, and it was supposed to be a lesson in not going outside of your box, I guess. And the entire original phrase is actually curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought him back. It's originally a phrase that's meant to, yes, question your box, test your boundaries, you know, wonder about life, learn something new, learn something that you just assumed was always the case and that it actually can be changed. And another in that same vein is oh, I'm gonna butcher this one, and it isn't even in the book, but it's something like blood is thicker than water, where it's basically supposed to be like well, obviously family is stronger than non-family. It's kind of what it seems like, but the whole phrase is actually the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of something or other. And what it's actually saying is that the bonds that you form, you know, willingly, intentionally, are actually stronger than the ones that you just happen to be born into. So it's actually a phrase trying to tell you that you might have some bad eggs in your family, but the people that you surround yourself with, if you make good decisions, are actually going to help you out in life a little bit more than circumstance. You know, there's a bunch more. It's just to me the full meaning of it being lost over time and actually ended up meaning the exact opposite has always been fascinating. Where it's like I'm not one of those crazy conspiracy guys, but it almost seems like, especially with like the cat one and stuff, that if you slowly lose the course of the original meaning over time to make it more fit the narrative of control, say, that's something that I feel should never be lost. So, I mean, again, maybe I'll think of more as the episode goes on, but I definitely think that's something to look into. Some of them are really fascinating, and I'm kind of embarrassed I didn't come here prepared and get more into the ones that I had originally thought of when I was driving home and thinking about doing this episode. But that is definitely something that I always found fascinating. Um, Along the same vein, this book that she happens to have is entertaining and enlightening. Sorry. I was just thinking, I was talking about narcissism, and I was like, oh, the thesaurus, and I got to the ends. Well, this person said this book is entertaining and enlightening, and I was just thinking, oh, they apparently get to the E part of the thesaurus. Even though that's not how thesauruses actually work. They don't go by alphabet. So it just got completely broken down, but again, I'm keeping it in. So you've probably heard of some of the stuff like let the cat out of the bag. That's one that I already knew about, but most people might not know the origin. So let the cat out of the bag is obviously, reveal a hidden truth, like a secret or something. They spilled the beans, as it were. So back in the day, they used to have this thing where you would buy a pig, baby pig or whatever, and it would come in a sack. And so, pigs by far were more expensive than cats, which would be roaming around the alleys, eating whatever small things they could find, reproducing and all that stuff. So if you could catch a cat and put it in a bag and sell it for the price of a pig, you made some bank. And usually this was at an event or a fair that by the time you realized that they'd already picked up and moved on. So if they give you a sack and it's moving, so there's something alive in it, then you're like, oh, but don't open the bag because the pig could escape, and you're like, oh, I think I see what's going on. So if you insist on checking the bag and seeing that it was in fact a feline instead of a pig, that's letting the cat out of the bag. I think there's a pig and a poke, that's also related to that phrase, which that one I'm less familiar with, but I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong. But letting the cat out of the bag is one. Like pulling the wool over someone's eyes. Again, I don't know if these are even as commonly used these days as they were back when I grew up. But pulling the wool over the eyes, I believe, is along the same lines of back when they used to wear those big white wigs, which you may or may not be familiar with. I think that they kept it up with judges in certain areas, but back in the day, people used to have white and rouge makeup. The guys were the peacocks as opposed to the females. Where that's how it is in most. Again, I always go back to animals. I'm fascinated with animals. I find it interesting that for the most part, most animals out in the wild, it's the males that have to be flashy, showy, colorful, do mating dances, all that stuff in order to attract the female. Most obvious one is the peacock, where they have that ridiculous tail that is just one huge display. And this was an era where the guys would wear wigs. I believe that it might have something to do with either baldness or other issues. And they were mostly made out of wool. So super itchy, super uncomfortable. And of course, a very common prank amongst the tricksters was to come over and then yank the wig over their face, so then blah, 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 and then yanking the wig over their eyes. Hey, who did that? So pulling the wool over their eyes because the wigs were made out of wool. So just it's neat because if you know the origin of the story, you get a little bit of a glimpse into how life was back in the day, and also how common it was for it to become a phrase. I think my favorite one that I just skimmed through this book before I turned this on, but I think one of my most interesting ones is "Don't give a damn" is just a phrase that I never really thought about. And what's funny is that if I'm trying to make this podcast swear free, in this one instance, it actually is. So, don't give a damn. So there actually was a form of currency in the same origin of the ruby that was called a dam, and it was like a percentage of the ruby. And at one point, it was at a pretty low value. You couldn't buy anything with it. So it was a British expression for "I don't give a damn," meaning like just kind of like how these days a penny's not even worth picking up off the street unless you believe in luck or unless you're really in dire straits. You're actually these days more worried about what's on the penny than picking it up and getting a 1 cent value. So saying "I don't give a damn" actually refers to a currency as opposed to a cuss word. That one was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty fascinating. Um, Bury the hatchet. I don't know. Raining cats and dogs. Maybe I should look some of these up. But so, for instance, I'm just looking at some of the ones in the back for examples, rather than going through the whole thing and having you sit here while I awkwardly read the passages. That might be where I end up going with this, though. Anyway, crocodile tears. I'm pretty sure is because with crocodiles they're in the water. If they blink, some gets there, and they're obviously not crying, but it does look like they have tears. And so somebody that's just sobbing big old wet ones in order to gain sympathy, but they're not really sad or sorry. They're just oh, I can't believe it, and trying to gain sympathy. They call them crocodile tears. I'm pretty sure that's what that one is. Piping hot. Piping hot's got to be from a tea kettle, right? Three sheets to the wind. I know is a nautical term. So I don't know. Let's just open up to a random one and see if it's one that I already know off the top of my head. Nope, teetotaler though. That one I am interested in finding out about because I know that teetotaler means somebody that is not drinking. And so there's an old game of put and take. And so, okay, so it's just, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but there was basically a game that referred to. And so, yeah, it's basically total and not, borrowed from the game of Teetotum. So it was a very popular game. That'd be interesting. Maybe we could play a game of teetot them at some point, and just to get kind of an like kick the can on all those old games that just don't mean anything anymore these days. They used to just be the only source of entertainment back in the day. Now we have these awesome video games and all sorts of stuff. So let's see what else. Oh, so like for instance, here's one that I'm not. It's probably in here, but I always found it interesting that pull yourself up by your bootstraps now is a way of saying, hey man, get it together. Help you help you to help you. And I think that that is very interesting, especially in these days where you might not be able to help yourself and you might need help from somebody else. And they're just saying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, take it on the chin or any of those. And back in the day, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it's supposed to mean something that's impossible to do. So, for instance, if you think about the phrase literally, think about reaching down to your shoes and literally trying to pull yourself off the ground by pulling up on your shoes. Physics means it's impossible. You're not actually going to be able to lift yourself off the ground by your bootstraps. So it's originally supposed to mean something that's physically impossible to do, and now it's supposed to be a term of, suck it up, buttercup. And that's probably not in here. That's probably just a rhyming thing. But I find that interesting where now a lot of days, I think there's been more exposure to it lately where, mental illness is a very real thing. Sometimes you can't be the one to get yourself out of it because how can the organ that is sick also diagnose and or treat said organ? So I think that if somebody's telling you to pick yourself up by your bootstraps, maybe you are just being a little whiny bee and maybe you do need genuine help and that person needs to be a little bit more empathetic. I looked at the camera like I'm talking to you, person that I don't know. Oh, eat crow. That one's one that we still use. I mean, maybe humble pie is more common these days, but I have heard of eat crow. It's basically the same thing. So you were wrong. You're humiliated. You're defeated, and so if the farmers absolutely hated black crows because obviously they've had scarecrows, for the cornfields. Like the crows would just yank plants right from the ground, eat the kernels and seeds. So if a farmer had to face a unpleasant reality, it'd be like they had to eat crow, which I'm assuming that a crow tastes gross. I don't know. That's starting to make even less sense now that I read about it. I don't want to. Oh, they do have this one here. So this is okay. This is one that I even used when I was job hunting. So this is one of my favorites. So you've probably heard the phrase "jack of all trades." You might have even heard the next part of that phrase, "jack of all trades, master of none." But I guarantee you that you probably have not heard the entire phrase, which is "jack of all trades, master of none" is still better than master of one. So the original phrase sounds like it's a put down on if you're good at a lot of little things, but you're not good at one specific trade, that you're at a disadvantage. And that's actually the opposite. What the phrase is saying is that if you're good at this and good at that and a little good at this, a little good at that, that you are a much more useful person than if you say stuck to a certain field. Now what's funny is that I am not knocking anybody that went and got a degree, spent 4 or 8 years on becoming good at a specific thing. But it does suck because what if that thing is now no longer needed in society? Things rise and fall and change all the time. I mean, crocodiles are dinosaurs, right? And you know why that is? Is because when everybody else was dying, crocodiles eat rotten meat, and there was more than enough of that to go around, so crocodiles thrived when everything else was dying off. Sometimes you're just better adapted to the said time. So if you spent all of your life getting adapted to one thing, and then that one thing becomes obsolete, I'm thinking right now of it might be a good example, bad example, but it's something that I've always been very fascinated by is the origin of Jim Carrey, who his dad was an electrician, I believe. I know it was a tradesman, but I'm pretty sure it was an electrician. And the Great Depression happened, and he was suddenly out of work. And he'd only gotten into the profession to begin with because he was certain that people were always going to be needing electricity, so he was completely safe. But instead, there was a flood of electricians right about the time when there was a complete lack of jobs, and he was out on the streets. So Jim Carrey, his father, his mother, his whole family had to live out of the back of, I believe it was a station wagon. They had to live out of a car. And so uh, this was a very pivotal time in Mr. Carrey's life because he was young, he was impressionable, and it was also hard times. And so Jim Carrey's dad's parents, his grandparents, would often come to the car, or their house, the car, and they would berate the dad for being a horrible parent. They're like, "Look at you living out of a car. You can't raise your kids. You're shit. You're not going to be worth anything. Ha ha ha. Getting to be an electrician. And so they would leave, having done their damage, and there would just be all this tension and pressure in the family. And so Jim Carrey, uh, learned very early on that it's like, oh, if I do an impression of them after they leave, you know, you guys are shit. You guys don't know nothing. You're a bad father. Beep, 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 beep. And it would make the family laugh, and like the pressure would get released, and he realized the strength and the powerfulness of laughter. And also from his dad, the importance of not investing your life in a job that you hate, because even that isn't a guarantee. So you might as well go broke and starve doing something that you love. And he loved making people laugh. Most especially that his start was with impressions. So he became a huge impressionist. He was even opening for Rodney Dangerfield, who at the time was one of the biggest comics around. And God bless him, he realized that, okay, yeah, I'm making a lot of money, but he slowly realized that doing impressions wasn't the thing that he loved anymore, because that wasn't his voice. He felt like he had a unique enough voice to be able to be funny without needing to rely on being good at doing an impression of somebody else, despite the fact that he had such a rubber face that he would spend hours in the mirror practicing, so that with his impressions, a lot of people that do impressions just often do the voices, but with him, he could scrunch his face up like Clint Eastwood. He could do that grin like Jack Nicholson, and his impressions were a little bit beyond what most any others would be. I mean, even with Sammy Davis Jr., rest in peace, but he'd even be able to do the eye, because unfortunately Sammy Davis Jr. did have a glass eye, which he was pretty sensitive about, but eventually he just realized, hey, it is who I am, man. I'm sure the coke helped. I'm sorry, just kidding. Rest in peace. But so he completely nixed the act of doing the impressions, and he would just go on stage and just do wild stuff. I mean, like he would have orange spiky hair and big oversized yellow pants, and just often get nothing, not even a boo. He wouldn't even necessarily bomb that badly. It would just be dead silence of like, what the f am I watching right now? And God bless him. He eventually found his voice, and arguably would then go on to be one of the most successful comedians. Having shows and hit movies. And what phrase got me to that? Oh, so jack of all trades. So, if he had invested all of his skills into being an impressionist, and then if the woke movement had happened earlier, and it was people got like overly sensitive about like, well, that's identity theft or personal appropriation or something like that, he wouldn't have anything to fall back on. Where instead he found his own voice, so he found a way to look at the world with a unique eye of his own. And so no matter what the world threw at him, he was going to be able to find a way to look at it funny in his own regard. I don't know if that fits. Halfway through, I was just like, "This is even relevant to what I was saying." I don't care. I get to tell this story that I love about Jim Carrey. Who shout out Jim. He's still kicking. Oh, so one of the ones in here is Kick the Bucket. So that one's dark. If you don't want to get dark, go ahead and change the channel. But that one I thought was very interesting, where I was like, where did that come from? I know they had Kick the Can back in the day, but why does Kick the Bucket mean die? Yeah. Oftentimes if they lynched you, they stood you up in an overturned water bucket. And when it came time to hang you, you get it. You get it. You're getting it. Getting into the scrape, that just seems so obvious, I don't even know if I want to get into that one. Call a spade, that's kind of boring. Lion's share, if you know anything about animals, that one's probably pretty self-explanatory. I mean, if um, most of the times, oftentimes there'll be a scene in a picture where it'll show lions eating a fallen gazelle or antelope or whatever the heck they eat, and then you'll see a whole pack of like hyenas on the outside, like looking for some scraps. And what the picture often doesn't show you is that the hyenas are actually the one that took down that animal, and then the lions showed up, chased him away. It's just like, come on, I'm a lion, you're a hyena. I got this. I could kill you. And then so the poor hyenas that did all the work would then have to wait for the lions to be done eating before they could even get a little bit of the kill that they had. I assume that's what it's talking about. Now, Dog Days of Summer. Now, this is interesting to me because I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Dog Day Afternoon. And that was a really good Al Pacino movie. And so Dog Days of Summer is obviously for heat waves. And, okay. So, okay, so basically it's from Roman times. So, Canicula res dies, which is the dog days on the hottest days. So, they dogs apparently show up in all sorts of idioms. So this is just right to my heart. I mean, come on, the more dog, the better. In my opinion, you already know by now. This is a dog lover podcast, so never even heard of half of these. But putting on the dog, gone to the dogs, dog and pony show. That one I've heard. Dog eared, dog fight, dog irons, dog it, dog tired, dog soldier, doggy bag, in the doghouse. A lot of stuff dog related. So that's cool. So apparently that all stems from the Romans, which I guess they were dog lovers as well. Good for the Romans. Sorry that didn't pan out for you. Much like we probably won't, the way things are going. But it is what it is. Horn of plenty. I think that's the cornucopia. Horn that has the fruit in it. If you know what I'm talking about. Shut from the rooftops. By heck. Oh, that's funny. Well, damn was an interesting one. So why not check this one out? So by heck has a very heroic origin. Interesting. It's from the Greek by Hector, which is named, one of the son of Achilles or Achille, if you know how to properly pronounce Achilles. Um, God, I'm getting really nerdy out right now, but yeah. So I don't even know if I need to read into the rest of this one. Oh yeah, so Hector, so uh, you know, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So if you know about Hector getting dragged behind the chariot, oof. Because he had caused trouble by slaying too many men. So by Hector. Okay, wow. So by heck is by Hector. So even though it's one of the least offensive cuss words, it actually is from quite a heroic guy, Hector, who took on Achille and unfortunately was not the better. But just the fact that he even did. I think that he even wanted to have it be a gentleman's thing where the other person gets buried appropriately, and Achille was not having it and was. Oh, here we go. Rule of thumb. I'm all over the place. I don't even know if this is going to be airable. Maybe I'll keep it as one of the bonus episodes, or I'll just keep it in. So, rule of thumb oftentimes is a little bit misunderstood. So, yes, it did technically come from a phrase of a judge saying that a guy wasn't able to beat his wife with a stick larger than the width of the thumb. Now, there is a judge that said that, and whether or not he even meant it, this could have been him trying to make a crass joke where he was actually sickened of how women were treated. But the point is not how he meant it, but the point is how it was received. It got a lot of backlash. There was satirical cartoons. His name got dragged through the mud, for better or worse. But the origin of that is actually much older, where you know we didn't use we actually used to measure things by the thumb. So obviously, if you wanted to get a length of something, a length of wood or metal or whatever, you do a thumb, a thumb, a thumb, a thumb, and there's obviously varying different sized thumbs. So if you get it from a small thumbed guy, then you're not going to get as good of a deal. So I think eventually one king was like, all right, well, we're all just going to base it off of my thumb. So I think his thumb was an inch long. 12 of them was roughly the length of his foot. So, that's an inch, that's a foot. Let's call it good. And rule of thumb originally was by a unit of measurement. So the whole rule of thumb being the stick beaten, it's true and it's not true. It is technically uh, a thing, but the origins go much older than that. And it's just something that people like to bring up about like how bad women were treated, which is ridiculous. It's not ridiculous that that people think that they were treated badly. I mean, it's ridiculous that like the slaves were freed before the 1900s, and women still weren't able to vote until 1920. That just blew my mind when I learned about that. Making ends meet is right now associated with staying afloat financially, but in the case back in the day, it was clothing, buckling a corset. So don't know how it became. Oh, you know what? Okay, so you'd often need an assistant to pull the two ends of the corset and then buckling it where both ends meet. So making ends meet, obviously you need to have an assistant. If you're not rich enough to have an assistant, you're kind of broke, and so you're not rich, so you're not able to make ends meet financially. Huh, fascinating. I hope this isn't boring to you. I find this kind of stuff just wholly interesting because I mean these are our origins. Just as important it is to read history. Sometimes I feel like history is only written by the winners. So how accurate could it be? Whereas something that was so common of a thing that it became a phrase, like barking up the wrong tree. Again, dog related, but you can probably figure out where that's coming from. All right, you would go hunting with a dog. They would chase a game up a tree. Maybe the dog got it wrong. The hunter would come over, find out the dog was actually barking up the wrong tree. So it brings you back to a time where it's like, oh yeah, we didn't have supermarkets back then. We had to hunt almost every single day in order to get dinner for the table. And, you know, obviously we have so many more amenities like, toothpaste and modern medicine to make our lives easier. It's arguable that back when we would catch our own food, I mean, if you follow Rogan, he'll tell you this, like there's such a connection to the meat and such a connection to life and also a much more pressing need to stay fit if you have to catch your food all the time. And also it shows the importance, back in the day of like, hey, let's figure out this refrigeration thing quick because we just don't have enough salt in order to keep the meat that we caught fresh for long. So I mean, can you imagine actually managing to take down a moose back in the day, and then within a day, the entire meat is unedible for humans because it has maggots? I mean, So yeah, I can understand why refrigeration and preservatives were such a huge thing back in the day. Just that moose should ideally be able to feed an entire one person for an entire winter. Just to keep that in mind. And so obviously people probably love the winter. Hey, look at that, it's frozen, so all I have to do is build a fire, slice a piece off, and now I don't have to worry about it going bad for the entire season. Of course, now I have to worry about freezing to death and finding enough wood, but So, maybe I'm just gonna. No, forget that. No, because this is fascinating. All right, so lock, stock, and barrel. I've always wanted to know about that. I figured it would have to do with the. Yes, the flintlock gun. I was right. So lock, stock, and barrel. So that makes sense that the movie Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels was gun related. So, oh, and it's related to flash in the pan. I never knew about the phrase flash in the pan, which is supposed to be something that. Oh, athletes who rise to stardom and then vanish just as quickly from the scene are described as flashes in the pan. I have never heard that. But apparently both have to do with the flintlock gun, which used to have an actual smoldering fire. Or, yeah, so you have a lock, you have a stock, and you have. All right. Lock, stock, and barrel. All right. I think that should be enough of that. So you kind of get the idea. Phrases are always been a big thing for me. I love the ones that no longer have the same meaning that they originally did, and it's kind of telling where, you know, the the original phrases would have to do with being an individual and questioning, life, and then it ends up being something kind of just try and keep you in line. So, again, I'm not saying that I believe that that's something intentionally done by the powers that be, but who the heck knows? So that's just stuff that always kind of fascinated me. Everybody always has their hobbies, their stuff stuff to do. If and when I start getting any comments in the comment section, besides some very loyal friends, which I do appreciate. Pardon my burps. I'm talking through my burps. I feel like a John Mulaney joke right now. I'm like, you guys are awesome. So shout out to John Mulaney. Last I heard, he was in rehab. I hope he's doing all right. That sucks. The guy, especially because he already had his. I thought he had his stint and was over it and was very comfortable with just having comedy be his drug, but I don't know if going to write on a show ended up being a little bit too much pressure for him. But I mean, he put out like three specials. It seemed like bam, bam, bam. I don't know what the actual air dates were, if he actually did put it out that quick, or maybe he'd accumulated a lot of material over time. I'm not sure, but shout out to him. Especially in these days, it's very easy to get into depression and addiction. I thought it was hilarious. I don't know who it was, but there was somebody that had a video where they were out for a walk or out for a jog, and so they would go to each person's recycling bins and open them up, and it was just filled to the brim with alcohol bottles. And it was kind of funny when everything went down, and then the essential businesses stayed open, and a lot of marijuana stores took a backpedal, but the alcohol stores never. They barely even lost hours. They had a slight reduction in hours, and that was about it. So I thought it was funny. I was just like, oh, okay, so I see. The alcohol is funded by the government, so of course that's an essential business. And actually, no, the reason for that was actually pretty impressive. So, um, yeah, unfortunately, if you withdraw from alcohol, unlike most any other drug, if you quit morphine cold turkey, you're gonna have a bad go of it. But you can't die from withdrawals. Alcohol is one that your body does actually get used to the fact, and you can get delirium tremens, which is shakes. Your body's not processing things correctly, and so if you are a hardcore, full blown alcoholic, you could easily die from just quitting instantaneously. Now, what I hate is that doesn't mean that if you are an alcoholic and you're thinking of quitting, that you should just wean yourself off. They actually have drugs in place, so you should actually, if you decide that you want to quit today, and you have the means to be able to get the replacement drug, then you should do it that way, because immediately just stop doing the ritual of the drinking and get on the other drugs instead. And I mean, don't take my word for it. I'm not a scientist in anything. That's just something that I heard. But I mean, well, I do know for a fact about the fact that you can die from alcohol. So anyway, the long story short is that drunks are going to drink, and if you suddenly cut off all access to liquor, you are going to have the hospitals flooded with people that are going through alcohol withdrawals that are definitely absolutely going to die. And at the time, hospitals were already very much flooded with COVID cases and or just false positive COVID cases where people were like, "Oh, I have flu-like symptoms, so I need to come in because I think I have COVID." So they're actually just trying to keep people out of the hospitals for the time being. Where it'd be nice if they had a little bit more PSAs of like, hey, if you're an alcoholic, here's a program that you can do to help. It doesn't seem to happen as much because most of those are nonprofit, like the anonymous places. But why would they advertise for, hey, get off of the thing that we sell? So there's not so much of that. And what blows, no, I was gonna get briefly political. This isn't really that political. This is just more of an observation where they wear a mask, socially distance, but what would really help a lot is taking specific vitamins, like for instance vitamin D and stuff, which I'm sure you've probably heard of already. D, zinc, whatever the medicines are that helps you better absorb the D and the zinc. Because I know that at least with zinc by itself, like unless you eat a buttload of turmeric, you're not really absorbing the zinc like you should, and it does help. So what I just find fascinating is that, well, you know, wouldn't the pharmaceutical companies just be jumping on that bandwagon and be like, hey, buy some vitamin D, buy some zinc. We sell it by the bottle, and we're making mad stinking profit off of it. So I just it blows my mind that they're still. Besides like maybe Joe Rogan, I haven't heard anybody talk any of the commercials about that. And it's like, come on, big pharma. You're all about the vaccines. I guess there's more money in that maybe, but in the meantime, wouldn't you be making bank off of everybody having 8 different bottles from the whole alphabet of vitamins? Which Dimitri Martin had an interesting point. Like, how do we name those vitamins? I think he said that like we have vitamin A, and then I'm not even gonna do the joke, but we have B, and then B12, and then a bunch of different Bs, and then C, D. I don't think we have an E or an F or G or an H or an I or a J. Anyway, but yeah, the point is that the vitamins are named kind of weird. It isn't like they're going strictly by the alphabet for whatever reason. But don't they want to sell them? I don't get it. Doesn't Big Pharma want to sell them? I mean, it's just crazy. So that's about as political as I want to get into it. I mean, and even that isn't political. It's just an observation about like what is the information that we're getting here. I mean, we already know to have a healthy skepticism. If no, no, I'm done. I'm done. I'm leaving what I already said in, but I'm self censoring and leaving out the rest of the stuff that I was going to talk about. So, all right, so let's just get into the minutia of my life. Some of the weird little stuff. Did you know? I don't know if you guys are a fan of Rick and Morty like I am, but they have some ridiculous games for Rick and Morty. And when I say games, I mean just like actual card game, almost board like games, oftentimes based off of individual episodes. And I know this kind of sound like a Rick and Morty promotion. It's not. It's just something that me and my girl, we are not dumb people. All right, we're pretty darn good at cribbage, and that's a pretty fast-paced mental math game. And so we got this one that's based off of the uh, miniverse, teenyverse, microverse episode, if you know what I'm talking about. And it is complex as all heck. I mean, nerd alert, was a big fan of Magic growing up. I didn't really get into Pokemon because I thought that that was just trying to, well, because it was mostly a card game before it was a video game, and so I thought it was trying to capitalize on Magic. So I always had a nerd thing about like, oh, Pokemon is like the little kid's version of Magic. That's just shows how much of a geek I was. I was being elitist about those kind of card games. And I do recognize Pokemon's worth now. I actually really loved when Pokemon Go first came out. It was actually getting people out of the house and going to places that like we should. It's weird growing up with libraries and now having libraries quickly having to become a new thing in order to survive. Where we should be even grateful that we have them as a free thing to be able to use. When I was living in Tucson, I used to use them all the time. Hardly ever for a book. I would actually just use it for a cycling of free movies. I didn't have great service where I lived, and I had a DVD player, so I'd actually just get DVDs all the time. And very quickly, I ran out of the good movies, what I would consider good, and then I started getting into documentaries. And by gosh, they got me. I was learning again, just through doing it through that way. But now, they have it where you can use them as, conference areas, like the whole shh thing is of the past. The whole being quiet in a library. Now they actually encourage, it as a social gathering because they're just trying to stay alive. And it's something we used to just be blessed to have, back in the day. I hate using the word blessed, but hashtag blessed. But there it is. It's something that is a great thing to have as a resource. And it just sucks because nowadays it's almost impossible to find a decent job that uses a paper application that doesn't pay dog shit. Pardon my French, but anybody that any job that's going to pay you a semi decent amount of money is already online and online only. You have to have a computer for literally anything. And I don't know if you're like me, but I don't exactly have a laptop and desktop and tablet, and I don't have like multiple computers. Right now I'm recording this on a relatively crappy laptop with a halfway decent webcam because that's all I have at my disposal. And I'm the kind of person that, unless I have a really, really, really important reason, like if I thought that this thing was starting to take off and I need to up the production value in order to get enough viewers, in order to have it be enough to start getting paid for it, then yeah, I would invest, and I probably might in the future, but for right now, I was so uncertain, I don't. As I'm recording this, I actually did do my taxes, and I don't know about you guys, but I was scared poopless about if I was going to get anything back, if at all, because I mean we got stimulus checks. I had to go on unemployment, so normally for taxes I break dead even. I usually get about $60 back from the government, and then I usually have to pay $60 for TurboTax in order, and you know what I mean. So like I usually, if anything, break even, and I was okay with it. I didn't really expect much, but I was freaking out about filing for 2021 because I was like, oh my god, am I gonna owe? So, the the stimulus I didn't even touch because I was like, what if I need to use that to pay? And I actually ended up getting a little bit of a chunk of change, and I was pleasantly surprised. I don't know what that means for the future. I oh, look a gift horse in the mouth. I hate to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I'm always skeptical, especially when it comes to government. Again, I'm not one of those tinfoil hat guys, but I am always skeptical. If they're giving you extensions and you're getting more back than you normally would, and yet we're in a crisis and businesses are shutting down. Where are the priorities? So I I got all lit up because look a gift horse in the mouth is one that I still hear being used, and that is one where I actually do know the origin of that without having to have boring airtime where I'm just reading at you. And that is one where if you can tell how old a horse is if you look in their mouth and you see how long the teeth are or what condition the teeth are in. I believe it's one of the two or a combination of both. So it's like saying, let's say somebody was nice enough to offer you a horse, which back in the day was no small thing. So they were nice enough to give you a horse instead of saying, "Holy crap, thank you so much. This is so huge. What can I do to repay you?" And instead, you go up to the horse and you start looking at their mouth, where it's just like, "Oh, so you got me an old one, huh? A one that's about to die horse." It just seems, like, dude, could you, it's like the people that were just like, "Can you just take the compliment?" And instead of being a dink about it. That's not a good example, but you know what I'm saying. It's like look a gift horse in the mouth. It's like what a douche move to hey I get you a gift. Okay, well what quality gift? How much did it cost you? Oh, you only spent $20 on me. Well, I mean I spent 35, but whatever. I guess it's all good. Yeah, it's just kind of a douchey thing. So don't look a gift horse in the mouth is where that came from. So apparently you look into the horse's mouth to determine blank, either their age, their health, something along those lines. And I think it was the length of the teeth, but I might be wrong about that one. But I do get the general gist, and that is that. So I digress on that one. So where the heck was a gift horse in the mouth? Oh yeah, so I just don't know what's going on down the line. So I'm really pinching pennies. I'm trying not to do anything superfluous. Some might consider it an investment. I'm like, well, we'll see where it goes. So, if I was into me doing this as purely for profit, well, it's not going to work. That's just the way that life has always worked. At least for me. I don't know about you, but if I did this purely for the profit of it, then it would very quickly go nowhere. Whereas if this is something that I just genuinely love, and I would do it even if nobody was listening, and it was just a way to practice talking for great lengths of time. I mean, I come from a family of talkers. My mom, my dad. All you have to do is just not talk to them for a week. Call them up. Boom, they have a new hour of material. Comedians would be jealous. It usually takes them a year or two to get an hour of material. Whereas, with my parents, it's just like, oh, they could spend at least an hour catching you up on just, all the things that coming and goings of the week. So uh, that's something where, hey, that's my origin, man. I should be able to do this no problem. Instead I'm checking and I'm like, shoot, I forgot to notice what time I started. So I want to make sure I get you guys at least an hour. But I feel like, am I going to get there? I don't know when I started. This should not be difficult at all. And at the same time, there's also some stuff that you may or may not want to share with the entire whoever might be watching. Like personal stuff or whatever. I mean, not much going on personally, and work wise, most of it I probably can't even disclose, and the other you wouldn't want to know about anyway. It's just mostly just boring paperwork stuff. So for the most part, it's what I get to do on the weekends, what I get to do at home, which unfortunately is usually getting home from work before my girl does, doing these recordings, and then hopefully getting dinner started before she gets here. Eating dinner and then hopefully getting a little bit of TV in before it's time for both of us to go to bed, get up super early, and then do it all over again. And then on the weekends, try and catch up some sleep, on some housework, and maybe a social adventure too, but mostly groceries. I'm sure you all can sympathize. Uh, I don't know. What do you guys think? Dishwasher, no dishwasher. I hear nowadays that if you can get a good setup, that you actually use less water and stuff. Like it's almost an investment. You actually use less water um, per round of dishes, and that they actually get them clean now. Back in the day, they used a buttload of water, and unless you had them pretty spotless to go in, then even then they would still come out with water stains. So I hear that they've improved since. So give me a shout out if you feel like that might be one to go towards. But instead, I think the next big thing that I want to purchase is mattress. There can't be enough said about having a decent night's sleep. I don't know if you've heard about how important sleep is, not just to your current health, but apparently Alzheimer's, which is one of my hugest fears. Death is number one, but losing your brain before your body is definitely a close second. So Alzheimer's, I guess, is very closely tied into a lack of sleep. Here I thought it was going to be the aluminum in the deodorant and all the weed I smoked back in the day. And apparently, bigger factor than that is getting enough sleep and I guess I think a recent study just came out having a diet high in leafy greens and lamb at least twice a week also helps with your cognitive functions much later on in life. So what's funny is that it's kind of a nice little segue into my non-sponsor of the day, which is the plan. And again, this is one I haven't asked permission from, but I don't see it being an issue, especially this early on when there's not really anybody watching. But I might have mentioned this in one of my first podcasts, but it's definitely important enough to reiterate if I did that right now with everything going on, it's been shown that your health, if you get sick, will not be an illness won't be as bad if you are relatively healthy, a decent weight, not a smoker. Unfortunately, at the time of recording this, I still am. Plan on eventually kicking that habit, but for right now, I mean, the stress of just living is enough to keep me smoking. But anyway, so a lot of health issues will help you out. Obviously, vitamin D has been shown to be a big one. Zinc, if you can find something that'll help your body absorb it, like turmeric. But inflammation is a big one. So, basically, when you get sick, it's your body getting inflamed. That's why, a lot of them end with itis, because itis actually means inflammation. That's one of the few things I remember from going through medical classes. But um, I've heard a lot about carnivore diet. I've heard a lot about vegetarian diet. I've heard a lot about keto diet, which that one I'm still not 100% sure how that one works. But, I've heard of a million different diets. Intermittent fasting, which there is still something to be said about that one. Apparently, that one can add a few years onto your life, but not enough that it's imperative that you do so. Like the older that you live, like for instance, humans can live up to be 100. If you intermittent fast, it's only going to add a couple years to the end of your life. Whereas if it adds a couple years to the end of say your dog's life, that actually is a lot more significant. But anyway, I digress. So um, one that I haven't heard of before is an anti-inflammatory elimination diet. And what that means is that, all right, at least in this example. So it's the plan. I mean, I figure I should do a shout out. It's Lynn Jeanette Recetas. Um, if you look up, on Amazon or any retailer, if you don't want to use Amazon, if you do the plan, you know, food book or anything like that, it should come right up. If you're having trouble understanding how to spell Lynn Jeanette Recetas, because I'm just too lazy to do the phonetic one today, but basically, a real quick rundown of how it works is that you do a 3-day cleanse where you basically have very, very little um, inflammatory foods. So she basically, has figured out some of the foods that are least likely to be inflammatory. And so she puts you on 3 days worth of that. And, hopefully gets all the inflammation out of your body. You usually gain 3 pounds almost immediately, and that's just from retaining water from inflammation and having too much salt in your diet. And then starting on day 4, she'll start introducing a new food or drink, new food or drink each day, and you weigh yourself each morning. Don't worry about the number on the scale; it's just a number. In fact, here's a neat little trick that I should have to start rewatching some of my old ones because I'm sure I'm starting to repeat myself, but that's gonna happen anyway, isn't it? So, a neat little trick that I've learned is that if you feel that you need to start weighing yourself because you want to start losing weight, but you don't like the number that's on the scale, well, a neat little trick is what you can do is most scales have a pounds versus kilograms, And if you're going to start any kind of diet, what you can do is you can just put it on the opposite of what you're used to. So in my case, it would be kilograms. I don't know how many kilograms are in a pound. And if I'm intentionally trying not to figure out how many there are, I'll never find out. So day one of weighing yourself, your blank, blank, blank kilograms. And then the next day, you can see if you have more or less kilograms. And then it isn't a number that has this meaningful thing to you. Like, I don't feel like if you go into any diet that it should be to get back to your high school weight, say. That might not actually be healthy. Your body might have developed enough afterwards that if you get down to your high school weight, you're going to lose a lot of muscle in your arms. Like I accidentally ended up doing. We were doing so well with the diet, but also being a little lazy and not working out, that since I wasn't, working at a pet store throwing around 50-pound bags of dog food all day long and then also going on a diet, when I lost some weight, I lost a significant amount of it from here. If you watched my last week's episode where I'm wearing just a t-shirt, I feel like it's very noticeable. I used to have a little bit more definition in there that I've always just kind of had, so I never really thought about it. But then I noticed that, went away because I wasn't using my arms and I was actually, eating enough to be able to lose weight in the areas that I thought was important. But, that's definitely not okay. I got to get that pumped back up. Hopefully, you'll be able to see the progress over the course of the episodes. But, um, it works. Even if there might be a negative effect of the fact that, the first 3 days she definitely says not to exercise. Just you want to kind of get your body to a zero base level, and then you can get back into doing exercise. And that was the part that we skipped and we shouldn't have. But so starting on day 4, you add food each day, and then you get on the scale the next morning, and then if you went up, well, then if you followed the rest of it, then that means that you are reactive to the food, and that means you should probably keep it out of your diet. I mean, out of your cycle of food that you would eat over the course of your lifetime. And if you stayed the same or went down, then more likely than not, it's a food that you're not reactive to, and you can include that in your menus. So, what I love about this plan is that it's not saying, oh no, like for instance, we were devastated to find out that we are highly reactive to tomatoes, which that was a big surprise. Um, you always would think that tomatoes are a healthy thing. Are they a fruit? Are they a veggie? Doesn't matter. They're healthy, right? It's in almost everything that's good. Nearly any Italian-based thing has a tomato, sauce base in it. Lasagna, spaghetti, and meat sauce, spaghetti and bolognese. Which is basically the same thing, but slightly different and good enough. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? It's just like if you're gonna have a pizza, like, oh, the grease on top, dab that off. Oh, the cheese, it's not doing me any favors, but I gotta have it. All that bread, all that bread, it can't be good for you. The last thing you would think is going to be affecting you negatively would be that tomatoes. But, believe it or not, tomatoes are highly acidic. They're part of the nightshade family. And according to her, 85% of the people that she put on the plan were reactive to them. And so we had, tried chicken. Chicken was fine. We tried rye crackers. Rye crackers are okay. She doesn't do so well with the bread, but rye bread and rye crackers were pretty decent. So we tried goat's cheese, and goat's cheese was pretty decent. So when it came time to try out the tomatoes, I decided to do a pseudo, chicken parmesan. So I had the chicken, I had the rye crackers for breading, I had the goat cheese on top, and then we took plum tomato, which is the least acidic tomato out of all of them, and diced it up and just put a fine layer on top of the chicken. And then the next day we were both up 3 pounds. So we were highly reactive to tomatoes. And so what I love again about the plan is, so okay, well, now we've tried to adjust our diet so that if we are craving pizza, we'll have a white pizza. Have one with a nice, olive oil and garlic sauce instead of tomato. Um, you know, if it's an Alfredo that we've checked to make sure that the sodium content is relatively low and that it doesn't have any tomatoes in it, then we might use that as a base. One of those times. But the point is that let's say that I am flat out craving a traditional plain old pizza with tomato sauce, and I don't give a damn, and I'm having it. Well, unlike most diets where it's like, oh shoot, I was strictly on this diet for like a year, and then I had a pizza, and now I'm just gonna crash, and I'm just gonna have like this eating spree. Well, that's not how it's supposed to work. You can absolutely have pizza with tomato sauce, according to this, but you just plan ahead. You're like, okay, I'm going to have it. So that means that I'm going to be up the next day. Expect it. Don't fret about it. Don't panic about it. Don't get into a spiral. I'm going to be up the next day. I'm going to be eating nice and healthy and anti-inflammatory foods, like turmeric and, all sorts of anti-inflammatory cinnamon, pepper, like all those spices, all the naturally anti-inflammatory foods you just make sure that you have afterwards so that way you can get yourself, rid of the inflammation and boom, you're able to have pizza. You just don't have it every single day. And, I hate to admit it, but I feel like, you know, 15-year-old me would never expect this to be true, but I feel like, especially now, if I did have pizza each and every single day, young me wouldn't want to admit it, but I probably could get sick of it. So, in a way, it's almost trying to teach you to be appreciative of the foods that you do like because, you know, you don't have them all the time because you know that you're just going to keep on going up and up and up with inflammation. And you can still have them. You just plan it. You plan ahead. You don't have it impulsively. You're like, all right, so I'm going to make up, some, for instance, in this one, the carrot ginger soup is a great one to reduce inflammation. So I'm going to, make up a pot of carrot ginger soup, and then I'm going to, plan on Friday having it be my pizza day or my spaghetti and meatballs day. And then for the next 3 days, I'm going to be good. I'm just going to have, some salads, some anti-inflammatory foods, some lean proteins like chicken, or lamb, like I mentioned. So that's what I was saying is that like this study came out that it was just like have plenty of greens that are mentioned in this book, and have lamb like twice a week, and that's one of the things that she said is like a lot of the stuff is vegetable based because we never eat enough vegetables for the most part, and that she said chicken you can have every day if you want to. Um, Beef, steak, that kind of stuff. Ideally don't have more than once a week until you've tested that you're not gonna, you know, keep that weight on if you do have it more often than that. But lamb, she said, is usually good to have, up to twice a week. She didn't know that study was going to come out. She didn't know that it was going to be right in line with her book. So, even though she's not paying me anything for it, I can't give more of a glowing endorsement the fact that, um, it definitely helped me and her, focus on something during the quarantine and, a healthy activity, to occupy our time. And it was definitely noticeable results. I got down to my high school weight and then I kept on going down. That's when I actually started to lose definition in the muscles because I was like, I feel fine. Most of the meals that you eat, you can eat till you're full. So I wasn't feeling like I was starving myself, and so I was just like, let's keep it going. And so I kept it going. And it isn't a diet; it's more of a lifestyle, change. Like it's been about a year, and her and I are still trying to be smart about what we put into our bodies. It's just a kind of a reworking of your brain of like, oh God, I could really use that. You're gonna be up 2 pounds afterwards because you know that that's something that inflames you. So I don't know. I liked it. I think you might too. It's something that I told my former boss about because he had gone on a 3-day cleanse, went back, had some pizza, and he was getting such reaction to it, and assumed it was everything else in it: the bread, the grease, what is in pepperoni anyway? Does he even know what's in pepperoni? No, it's like hot dogs. It's like that mystery meat where it's like I don't think I want to know what's in pepperoni, and so he assumed it was all those things, and I was like, dude, it's probably the tomato sauce. He looked at me like I, ate heads until like a month later, he mentioned it. He was just like, "You sob." Like I had a white pizza and I was completely fine. So it was the tomato sauce the whole time. So hey, I mean, if you had no interest whatsoever in these common phrases, and you had no care in the world about that, you're just like, please, could you just get to some decent content? This is really going to be what you're going to have for your content this day. This this cast. Well, yeah, you know what? But maybe that whole food thing was interesting to you too. If you're here for the dogs, maybe I'll talk more dogs the next time. I know that the last one I kind of went on a rant because I had a lot to say about Lilu's behavior. But speaking of her, I was setting this up and she was crashing all over with her wobbler, the thing that she eats from that it slowly dispenses food. And I thought that I was going to have to do a disclaimer right away. I didn't even mention that I'm joined by Lilu the Loud because she's just been super quiet ever since I pushed play. So I don't know if she's getting used to the routine or if she just got done playing right around the time I hit play. Maybe it was coincidence. I don't know. But anyway, Lilu the Loud's here, even though you didn't hear it this episode. So I guess good for you, baby girl. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't mind having your head in my lap, for a second. But, hey, if your dog seems to be exceptionally lazy, well, just keep in mind, I think a wolf pack naps for like 16, 18 hours a day. So that's just kind of where their origin from. Just make sure that you're not neglecting them as far as exercise goes, because they do need that as well. And don't start agility, until they're ready for it, which can be up to a year and a half for large breeds. And on a dog trivia fact, why not? Do do do. Find the button. Boom. Bye.